What is up, Remodelites? I am Dave with Remodel Media. That's Carlos.
Carlos?
He doesn't say much. And today is a very special day. It is the premiere episode, the pilot episode of our podcast. And in this episode, like any great story, starts at the beginning. We need to have an origin story. So I'm going to tell a little bit about my background. And Carlos is going to tell you a little bit about his. So here we go. I first got interested in remodeling way back when I was about 14 or 15 years old. My church actually did a service project called SSP, Sierra Service Project. And what that was all the churches on the West Coast, all the Methodist churches converged on one location, usually like an impoverished area, every summer, and would spend the time helping people rehab their houses, basic renovations. When I did it, we redid this guy's roof to be more energy efficient, so it would absorb less heat and reflect more sunlight off of it. And it was a lot of fun. Later, my church, again, they did an expansion, and that's when I actually learned a lot about plumbing. A shout out to Mark Miller Electric in Ramona, California. Although he's not just an electrician anymore, he's a general contractor now. Known him for a long time. He taught me quite a bit about plumbing, pipe, and which end of the blowtorch to stick where. So I kind of put that on the back burner for a while. As an adult, I spent a lot of my time working in retail until college. I had a friend who convinced me to throw on a yellow jacket and go watch concerts for free. So I did the security game for a little while. That was fun. I've got some stories there we'll share in the future, I'm sure. And my reintroduction back into the remodel industry actually happened when a friend of mine suggested that I go down to this little warehouse in San Diego, a little appliance store. You may have heard of it, called Ferguson.
Never heard of
him. Yeah. I went down there, I applied, and got a job in shipping and receiving. And then I started to figure out exactly how big Ferguson was and all the different products they offer. I went into every kind of training that I could, and management recognized my potential and pretty quickly moved me up through the parts counter and up again into inside sales and eventually into showroom sales. So I had the distinct honor of being one of the very first employees. I was in the first crew to open the flagship store in Vista, California. And I met a lot of really good people, and it was a lot of fun. Life took me in some different directions. The economy crashed in 2008. That was a big one. And I ended up working at Standards of Excellence for a little while. After that, I went and actually got in on the ground floor of a little company called Fixtures Living, which under that name, they do not exist anymore, but you may know them as Perch. And I had the distinct honor of working with some really talented people over there. And I worked alongside, Jeffrey Sears and some folks like that. And there was a lot of fun to be had over there and a lot of stuff to learn too. Not just about the remodel industry, but about business in general. I left Perch after a year after they changed their business model to being going into the shopping malls because, quite frankly, it was exhausting. And I actually sold my house, and I lived off of that for about a year, 10 months. I was trying to start my own business, didn't really fly. It turns out selling advertising when you don't have a magazine yet is actually very difficult. So I ended up back in the industry working for a really cool cat named Kevin Kuski. He was a factory rep for several big plumbing brands, including KWC faucets, Barkley product bathtubs, and Thompson Traders sinks, among others. Kevin's company got purchased by another larger company called Purcell Murray. I ended up at RSSA Home Improvement Center, where that's where I ran into Carlos. Now, my foray into YouTube and content creation is pretty interesting because my very first YouTube video I ever published was a tutorial on Bain Ultra bathtubs, specifically how loud is a Bain Ultra jet. I had a customer, very noise sensitive. She wanted to know how loud this Bain Ultra bathtub was that she was about to put in her house. So I found one that was live, and I did a little video for her. I threw it up on YouTube and I sent her the link. A little 1-minute video. I didn't think anything of it. And then...
How long ago was that?
That was about 6 years. Yeah, a little over 6 years ago now. And so then I went and I lived my life. Didn't really think much of the video. I referenced it a couple of times when other people had similar questions, like how does the air jet work? How loud is it? That kind of thing. And then last summer, 2018, my 7-year-old, well, at the time he was 6, my 6-year-old comes to me and he says, "Dad, will you help me start a YouTube channel?" And I kind of looked at him and got wide-eyed and I said, sure. I had no idea how to start a proper YouTube channel. The only thing I knew was how to upload a video. And so I started researching best practices, got some really good advice for some really talented people, and began helping him create videos under his channel, Joshua's Videos, which I'll put a link to in the description, of course, because I'm a good father. At least I think I am. And and we had a lot of fun. We did some hiking videos. He did a couple of video game videos, and he does a lot of stuff with like his Cub Scouts and stuff like that. So he's 7 now. So he's still making videos, having fun. And so I did that for about 6 or 7 months, and then Carlos actually heard me talking to a customer one day. And I can hear him chuckling in the background, just like you can hear him chuckling now. And I turned around and he said, "Man, you should have your own TV show."
Exactly.
And so I kind of laughed and I'm like, "Wait, I can." And because I now have researched how to start a YouTube channel and how to read YouTube analytics and how to read views and things and look at graphs on the back end of YouTube and all these things that you can do. I went back to that original video because I wonder what happened with that. How many views is that? 13,000 views. And it consistently still to this day gets an average of about 7 views per day. That 1-minute video. And it consistently gets views 6 years later. And instantly my heart just sank into the pit of my stomach because I realized what a missed opportunity that was. People were actually searching out that content and apparently finding it valuable enough to watch. So I ended up back in December of 2018, Carlos and I began, Carlos started following me around before work with a camera, and I began talking about sinks and faucets and all the other fun stuff that goes into a remodel. So that brings us to today. Carlos went off to work for another retailer, and I'm sure he'll tell you about that. And one day I get a text out of the blue from Carlos with a picture of this little box with these little wires and these microphones with just one line, "Remodel Media Podcast?" ? To which I responded, "Yes." And here we are. So Carlos, tell us about your background.
Well, my background in the plumbing appliance home renovation industry was really a fluke. I was when the market crashed. I was out of a job for about a year and a half, a little longer than that. And my brother, well, actually, he's my cousin, but I refer to him as my brother. He had been in the industry for God, I'd say maybe 7, 8 years in. Matter of fact, he worked at Standards of Excellence as well. He had worked at Home Depot, Lowe's,
Which
all
store?
the. I think this was in. I know it was in Orange County. I don't know. I don't remember. Can't remember the exact
Okay.
location, but I knew that
Huntington
he
Beach, probably.
probably,
Yeah.
yes, probably, more than likely. And he introduced me to the industry in a very awkward way. I was at home. I wasn't doing anything, and one day he asked me if I wanted to work. I said sure. And he brought me with him. We were doing a walkthrough, and all of a sudden, I see him unload a dishwasher from his truck, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "We're gonna work." So, my pre-introduction to the industry actually came via an install.
Oh,
So
wow.
I
Okay.
yeah.
You're,
So
you're helping your cousin, climbing
it's
underneath
yeah,
people's sinks. Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
That was very interesting, but it gave me some perspective as to, again, it was like my precursor to the industry, not knowing that I would eventually work in the industry, because I would say that went on for about 3 months,
Mhm.
and he got a little slower, and so I wasn't working as much. But anyway, about 6 months later, he's like, "Hey, do you want to work where I work?" He was writing books, getting several contracts for designers,
Mhm.
contractors, builders, etc. So it was creating a larger influx of work for him
Mhm.
that he needed help. So I started as an administrative assistant, which, again, a far cry from my previous background, which was consumer banking.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking, man, first of all, the pay was a fraction of what I was used to making. But I said, you know what, let me try something different. You never know. And so I started off as an administrative assistant, and I did that for about 9 months, and I graduated into the sales floor, um, and did that for about close to a year. I learned about appliances, plumbing. Never really learned cabinetry, which is still something. Cabinets is still something I'm still learning. But anyway, so did that for about close to a year. Ranked up the social media, the Yelp reviews, all that. That was my emphasis.
Mhm.
Working at that store, I was always customer service oriented, so that was one of my priorities. I said, you know what, I may not be as savvy, but I knew that I could utilize my attributes elsewhere, and it was just to crank up service in that way. And it was pretty successful. But I knew that we were having problems logistically, and particularly in operations. And so I had an opportunity to come in a lot earlier just to observe our process. An example is, us, where I used to work at Friedman's Appliance Center. That's where I started working. Our deliveries weren't met on time. There were communication problems. There was a disconnect. Traditionally, it seems in retail there's a disconnect in general between sales and operations.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I kind of wanted to merge that gap. I wanted to see how I can marry the two harmoniously. Again, no matter which business or what industry I've always been in, there was always this disconnect between the two
I
departments.
remember at one point, I think it was at Ferguson, when somebody referred to operations as the sales prevention department.
Yeah, precisely that. Yeah, exactly. So, it's funny because it's again, I've said this till I'm blue in the face, but in operations, is if you're not making money, you're helping the company save money. Provide cost-effective strategies, right, to increase profitability. That was always my idea, and that's what motivated me to observe everything they were doing. So I learned about purchasing. I learned about our logistics, or our delivery system. Learned about warehousing. So that was quite an experience, to the point where I convinced the owner to have me work remotely, doing the buying, the purchasing, which I did for about a year and a half from home in Texas.
Mhm.
So we were closing, I would say, about $1 million to $1 million in volume monthly. So I was
Mhm.
working long hours, but it worked.
Right.
And I guess I did that just to employ different systems and just kind of broaden their scope as to how business can be performed at a cost effective way.
Right.
That was my paradigm, right? That was my thought process at the time. So I moved back to Texas, and I managed a sales floor for about 9 months, and then moved into operations manager thereafter. And so that really sums up my entire tenure at Friedman's. And then after that, I moved back to Texas because I said, okay, I learned enough. My wife and I moved to Texas, started our own business, but she had an opportunity to move back. So here I am, and that's when I started at RSSA, and I met you. This was, last year, sometime in July. So, I mean, I summed it all up. I'm cramming in
Oh,
seven
yeah, for
years
sure.
of experience. But and now I'm at a different showroom, just doing essentially the same thing I was doing previously. It's just more of a operations role, and eventually, we'll see where that goes. But this was, to me, an exciting opportunity to do something that I felt isn't really explored in the industry enough, particularly when it comes to social media. Really, just and trying to really build an audience, for, as an example, how to the videos, for example, that you started. I found very interesting, and I always found a need for it. And that's what really motivated me to really join you and help you with this.
Right.
Um,
Well, I mean, that's the thing too, is all of these questions that I answer in these videos. I do a few interviews and things like that, but whenever I do how to pick a toilet or how to do this or what makes for a good kitchen sink, these are all questions that over the last 14 years, I must get like 3 times a week. I get the same question and I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong, but if that many people over 14 years need to know the answers to those questions, just the people that find me, one guy working in one showroom at a time,
yeah.
then there's probably dozens, hundreds, thousands of people that
It's
have the
absolutely,
exact
absolutely,
same question.
absolutely. Yeah.
And, why not publish the answers? Because,
And that was really what, again, that motivated me it inspired me to just help with this project, because it's to me, it was, number one, it's fun to
yeah.
do, and you're educating at the same time, which is, again, where I find many showrooms can benefit from, is just creating content devoted to educating their public, their customers, the consumer, right? And that's where
Yeah.
you came in. I'm like, dude, just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I went in and before I started this channel, I researched and I looked and I found lots of how-to videos, like how to install, how to DIY something, how to install a toilet. Sure, there's a lot of videos on how to install a toilet, but there's not a lot of videos on how to pick a toilet. The few that are
Right.
out there, because here's the thing, I mean, that's something that you and your whole family is going to use hopefully for the next 10 years, 20 years. And it's important to know what your options are, because the worst feeling in the world is, oh, if I had only known, I could have gotten a skirted toilet. What?
Right.
What's a skirted toilet? I didn't. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Things like that. And so oftentimes people don't even know what they don't know. They don't know that
Right.
there's other options besides the 1, 2, 3 ABC of what's at like Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, and then that's it. So
Yeah, it's interesting because it brings up an interesting conversation regarding feature versus benefit. Even if they being, whether it be Home Depot, Lowe's, even if there are videos out there, they're more feature centric as opposed to benefit centric, where, okay, you have these features, but how does that benefit me? How does it?
yeah,
You see what I'm saying? And
oh yeah, at Perch they have this really great saying when they're training new salespeople. They say, nobody buys the oven, they buy the chocolate chip cookie.
Precisely. Yeah.
I've met a few gadgety guys that really want to know the Tim Allen
Right.
types. They want to know more power.
Yeah.
How many BTUs?
Right.
How hot can this thing get? Stuff like that. But how fast does it preheat? Stuff like that. People that are very interested in these metrics that really have,
Or they may not even use.
or they don't even know why they're asking.
Right.
They just want to know.
Right.
But for the most part, people want to know, like, how is this going to positively affect me? And that I try and frame all of my conversations with the customers I try and frame that conversation in a way that, yeah, here's how you could use this thing in a way that hopefully they haven't considered before. So, but yeah, and you bring up another interesting thing, feature versus benefit. A lot of the other videos that I found were strictly sales.
Yes.
Now you'll notice that in some of my videos, I'll call out specific products, my favorite this or my favorite that, but I don't necessarily push any one, because here's the thing about every product that I sell. Every product that I sell is the perfect product for somebody.
Right.
There is no such thing as the perfect faucet or the perfect toilet or the perfect, whatever. It depends on who we're talking to and why they want it and what they're going to do with it. Are they putting it in a rental and they want to go low investment,
Right.
high reward? Or are they looking to have something that, looks professional, like a stainless steel kitchen sink, understanding that, yeah, it's going to scratch, but they want it to look like a commercial kitchen. Everybody's got their own button, right? And it all depends on, what people want out of that transaction.
I agree.
So,
I agree 100%.
yeah.
Good point.
All right. Well, this was a great first episode, I think. Let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure, of course, you share it with all your friends, because it's going to be even more awesome than it is now. In the future, we're going to start inviting some guests, have some folks sit with us, and discuss trends, where we see the remodel industry going, what are the latest and greatest things that we've seen out there, and
Even feel free to share your ideas as to what you'd
absolutely.
like to see.
Absolutely. You got somebody you want to see on the show? Tag them in the comments, share the video, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Awesome. Thank you.